Thank you, Veronica. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's CAPE Final Allocations webinar training. I hope you are all enjoying your summer and staying cool during this weather. So for today's agenda, we're going to cover CAPE's final allocations for 22-23. 22-23 CAPE allocation guidance memo that was recently released earlier this month. Go over some of the CFAD process steps, allocation process steps, certifying your 22-23 allocations in NOVA, and then also leave it open for questions throughout in the chat, but also at the end, we will leave it up for questions. Next slide, please. All right, so for 22-23, as you may have seen, the governor has released the budget, and for 21-22, we had a CAPE allocation of $560 million. The COLA was $29.8 million. However, with the May revise, additional funding was allocated for CAPE of about $6.8 million. We will also be seeing that there's, in addition to the May revise, and $130 million one-time funding to support healthcare-focused vocational pathways for English language learners through the adult education program was also carried forward. More details to come throughout the year on that. An additional $6 million for CAPE leadership funding, not additional, but continuing. And that leaves the total 22-23 CAPE allocation at a historic $733.1 million. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the CAPE allocation for prior year was $560.3 million. For this new 22-23, there was a 6.56% COLA increase, totaling about $36.7 million. And that brings us at a new CAPE base funding for 22-23, the allocation total of $597 million. Next slide, please. On this slide, you will see an overview of our CAPE allocations throughout the year, starting with 17-18. An initial $500 million, and you will notice that there's been an incremental increase throughout the years, and currently at a historic $597 million for our CAPE California adult education programs for 22-23. So that is, something great to see that we've continued to increase and currently at $597 million for our CAPE programs. Next slide, please. The CAPE allocation memo was recently released as of July 6th, so you may have seen that come through. We'll go over where it's been released, but there are details, important details on there, so you may have already seen that. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the memo was released on July 6th, right after the governor released the budget, signed the budget. The memo can be found in the July 13th newsletter and on the CAPE website under the following link. The memo was directed or directly emailed to all CAPE consortium leads and member representatives. The memo does provide a link to the 22-23 allocation amounts by consortia, and it also contains a link to the 22-23 allocation amounts for direct funded members. The memo does provide NOVA instructions and how to process the final steps of your consortium's allocation, along with separate instructions for direct funded members. And that is actually something that we'll cover a little more in depth during today's presentation. Next slide, please. So CAPE process, just to provide a little bit of an overview, the law does mandate that CDE and the Chancellor's Office provide the allocation schedules to the Department of Finance no later than July 15th. That is something that we have already carried out. The state must also disperse CAPE funds within 45 days of the budget enactment. So that is something that we are trying to present this information to the field to get this process going forward. The disbursement comes in 11 installments through June of the program year. Next slide, please. And the final allocation amounts for fiscal agents and direct funded members must be confirmed shortly after the state budget is passed on July 1st. If the CAPE receives an adjustment via the May revise, which we did, and or the trailer bill, the CAPE consortia and direct funded members will be asked to complete an allocation amendment by September 1st. So this is just an overview of the process. And as I mentioned, because we did have a May revise, there was an increase in COLA. That is something that will walk you through the process in today's presentation. Next slide, please. And I will hand it over to my colleague, Neil.
Thanks, Myra. So I'm going to answer some of the frequently asked questions, and then you can ask your own questions if you don't like the questions we have here. So, first question is, will the state update NOVA with the amended amounts that Myra referred to in the May revise? So let's see the response. Next slide, please. So yes, the state has updated NOVA to reflect the amended amounts by consortium. So if you go into NOVA, you will see each consortia has that amended amount. So like Myra said, each consortium must complete an allocation amendment in NOVA by September 1st, and Veronica is going to go over that process a little bit later in today's presentation. Please note, if you're a direct funded member, the final allocation amount has already been determined. And if you went back to that memo, I think Mandalee put it in the chat, Myra referenced it in her slides. There is a link in that allocation memo that shows the funding amount for all the direct funded members, as well as fiscal agents, but more importantly, the direct funded member. So, so if you're direct funded, you must use that amount and you must manually enter it into NOVA. So I think a couple of years ago, we had someone that used what they thought was a COLA percentage, but it didn't, because when you use our COLA percentage, it's not 6.56. I think that was the amount that Myra had in her slide. It's like 7 or 8 decimals out. And so if you don't use the correct decimal, which we advise you not to do, because we've already calculated it for you, you will have a different amount than what you're getting. And what will happen is you'll have your amount and you'll put it into NOVA, but the cash that the state's sending you will be off. So that's why you have to use the allocation amount already determined, because that's the amount of cash you're going to receive from the state. So they have to match up, or else your accounting people will have their ledgers off and they'll say, hey, what's this, you know, $15 error, or why are we over, why are we under? So we'll get into this a little bit later, but let's go to the next slide. There's probably another good question there. Oh, here's just an overview of the process. You're all familiar with this. Actually, before step 1, the governor releases the budget in early January, and then we send out the preliminary allocations by statute on or before February 28th. And then you guys have a couple of months to certify the CFAD, your allocations by May 2nd. And then, like it happened this year, but it doesn't happen always. I think last year it was a trailer bill edition. This year it was a May revise. So sometimes we get an adjustment after the CFAD. But because there's statute that says we have to submit the schedules to DOF and we have to get the funding out by August 15th, we can't wait around for those adjustments for you guys to figure it out. So if you're a fiscal agent, that's fine, because we know how much we're giving to your fiscal agent. Direct funded, we have to figure that out before, so we can put it in our schedules and meet July 15th and August 15th. And that's why we're giving the consortium until September 1st and their members. But if you're direct funded, you'll have to use the amount we already calculated for you. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's a question. How does the state CAPE office confirm allocation amounts at the local district level while meeting the July 15th deadline imposed by Department of Finance if we do not have to certify the allocation amendment until September 1st. So a little inside baseball there. Let's see what the response is. Survey says, oh. Next slide, maybe that was the key word. Okay, there we go. If there are any technical adjustments via the May revised or trailer bill to the state budget for adult education, the state will use the same funding formula to allocate funds to each consortia. So the same funding formula that we used to take that governor's budget, I think Myra said it was 560 million or so, that was our base. So we used our funding formula to determine how much each consortium would receive for the CFAT. This action will satisfy final allocation amounts for the consortia with fiscal agents. So we do the same thing if there's a May revise or trailer bill, we use that same funding formula. But next slide, please. For direct funded member, the state will use the same proportionate share or proportional share that was approved via the CFAD on May 2nd to adjust the budget upward or downward. So when you approve your CFAD by May 2nd, you're telling us that's the split of the funding for all members. So when we get an adjustment, upward or downward, we're going to adjust you by that proportional share. So let's go to the next slide. I'll show you an example of that, what we mean. So let's say this is Consortia X, and they have 4 members, they get $1 million, and the CFAT allocation works out with 3 members getting 100,000 each, and the member D gets 700,000. So when you look at the percentage share of how much each, the allocation amounts, the first 3 members get 10%, and the last member gets 70%. If you add that up, that's 100%. So next slide, please. So here comes the May revise. There's a $200,000 increase for that consortia. And so using that percentage, 10, 10, 10, 70, that 200,000 would be split 20,000 for the first 3 members and 140,000 for that last member, equaling the 200,000, getting to that 100%. Next slide, please. So then when we add it all up, here are those new amounts with the adjusted. So it was $1 million at the base. They got a 200,000 May revise adjustment, 1.2 million. And this is how it, member A gets 120, the other 2 members get 120, member D gets 840. So that would equal the 100,000. So we had a question, what's this formula does not take it? Is that the consortium such as our takes? Well, so we're only doing this at the state level. If you want to do an allocation amendment to move money around, I mean, we're doing this by statute. And so we have to do it this way. Now, if you have to move money around for internal agreements or functioning levels at the consortia level, you can do that via an allocation amendment. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a question. If I'm a direct funded member, why is the state CAPE office calculating this for me? My consortia wants to do other things with the increase. Or my consortia wants to put money at the consortia level to pay for things. So response would be, next slide, please. So in statute, the member receives no less than the prior year's amount, unless it meets one of the, the 3 causes for a funding reduction. That one, it's like the member can't do it, member doesn't want to do it, or the member's ineffective. So we got those 3. So they get no less than the prior year's amount, and a COLA means a cost of living increase for all members which are in good standing. So you can't say, oh, you get the COLA, you don't. everyone gets COLA. Now you can move it around afterwards if you choose to, through an allocation amendment based on your bylaws. But you can't refuse a member in good standing their COLA unless they say they don't want it, they can't do it, or they're ineffective, that kind of thing. The other thing is the timing. Fiscal agent and direct funded member allocation schedules are due to the Department of Finance by July 15th. So we just didn't have time for you guys to go back into NOVA in that 2-week, in some case 1-week window period to reallocate it. So we used your original percentages of the CFAD, like I showed you, to calculate what those amounts would be. And that's specifically for direct funded because with consortium with fiscal agents, we just give it to the fiscal agent. And then also CAPE funds, we have to get the money out, meaning over to state controllers, and state controllers gets it to the county offices, and county offices get it to the local district. That all takes, we got to do that within 45 days of the budget being signed. So a lot of stuff is writing, as you know, for some people who have been in adult ed for a while. When we didn't have this process in place, it was taking 6 to 7 months to get the funding out. Schools weren't paying teachers. Districts were running out of cash for adult ed. So we don't want to revisit that. And so we've come up with this process and we think it works pretty well. This is the second year that we've planned to meet statute, so we're excited about that. So next slide, please. Okay, here's another question. If I am a direct funded agency, where do I find my predetermined amount for the allocation amendment? Okay, next slide for the response. Direct funded members can find the link to the predetermined amount in the CAPE allocation memo that Myra showed you. If your consortia, this was to Annabelle's question, if your consortia wishes to make changes with their, I guess it's 22, 23, excuse me, allocations, they can do so via an allocation amendment. And that's what Veronica can show us too. So after you program this money and you still want to make changes, like the consortia has some money at the consortia level, then you can just go ahead and do an allocation amendment to move that money around after everyone gets their appropriate share, and it's certified by that September 1st. Keep in mind, if you are direct funded though, because the state has to schedule this money in those 11 installments, once we send that schedule to the state controllers, it's locked in for 11 months. So we can't change it to say, oh, yeah, you wanted to move some money from member X to member Y. Oh, we're going to change our disbursement schedule at the state level. We can't do that because once it's sent to controllers, it's locked in. So what you would have to do at the local level, if you're direct funded, you would actually have to cut a check, physically walk it, or maybe it's an electronic transfer. But just because you did the allocation amendment in NOVA, you still have to follow up with the next step, which is actually getting that check from one district to the other, or one adult ed program to the other, to reflect what the changes or the amendment that you did in NOVA. Or if that district is the consortia lead or responsible for consortia level stuff, then you would have to walk that check over to wherever that district is. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, did we, Veronica or Mandalee or Holly, did we get any questions? I know we got Annabelle's question. I think I answered that one. Did we get any other questions before we go into the live demo?
I did not see any additional questions.
Okay, so those questions that I answered must have been all the questions that you were wondering whether to ask or not. So I guess we were mind readers today, but you'll always have a chance later on to ask more questions. So I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Veronica. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Neil. So I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint and go over to NOVA to begin the live demo of the allocation amendment. 1 second. All right, I'll go back to sharing my screen. All right, so everyone should be seeing Nova and should be seeing the Antelope Valley Regional Adult Education Consortium. Everyone's able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So, and everyone knows how to access their consortium members. So you just log into Nova and then go to all programs, CAP, consortia and members. And you can either search for your consortium by number or by name, or click on one of these hyperlinks below. So I'm going to go to Antelope Valley again. And the first thing that you definitely should check when you come over to complete your allocation amendment is go ahead and check your CFAD. And the reason why we go to the CFAD first is just so you can see where the increase in your funding has been added. And so the increase in funding based on the increase in COLA after or for the May revise is added to your CFAD. However, we want to make sure that you understand that you will not be updating your CFAD. You will only be completing an allocation amendment. However, this additional for Antelope Valley in particular, this additional 52,000 will remain on their CFAD. Even next year, when you come to complete the CFAD process, the additional funding, as you've seen in prior years, either additional funding or even a reduction in funding will remain on your CFAD, but you will complete the allocation amendment for this particular process. So we just want everyone to be aware of that, because as we begin the CFAD process for the new program year, we tend to receive questions about why there is an increase or a red number on their total remaining. And so sometimes consortia leads, especially those who are coming in new to the position, are unaware of what has taken place prior. So you will not make any updates to your CFAD. That was completed in May and is done, but you will complete an allocation amendment. So I'm going to click the hyperlink for Antelope Valley to go back to their consortium details page. And I'm going to scroll down to the allocation amendment section, which is right under the CFAD section. And here I see the increase in funding. So the 52,438. And you want to just make sure that that's the same number that you see in your CFAD. And what you would do now is you will start the amendment process. Now, Antelope Valley only has one funded member, so this makes this process a little bit easier. However, if you have more than one funded member, of course, you will have to distribute the funds based on the consortium funding formula. But when you click on Start Amendment, you're going to receive this message that says to amend your allocations for 22-23. You will need to follow the work steps, and once submitted, the changes will need to be approved by the member representatives. So we're going to click Continue because we understand what's going to happen now. And the first window or first part of the workflow that you will see is the member agencies and certifiers page. And here, so Antelope Valley has two members that are a part of the consortium. However, the community college is a non-allocated voting member only, and the Unified High School District is the only funded member. So here, the member representatives, their titles as well, their roles as well as their phone numbers. Now, if Antelope Valley at this point, if they had voted to bring in a new member, at this point in time, they are able to add a new member agency here because they've already completed the CFAS, so they can't add the new member there, but they can add the new member here, and they can choose to allocate funding to this particular member. So you'll click on Add New Member Agency, and the new member agency information will appear. So you would just type in the member name and the member institution, and then identify if this is a non-allocated voting member only. You do not have to do this if you do not have a new member that's being added to your consortium at this particular time. But just know for future reference, anytime you complete an allocation amendment, it's also an opportunity to add a new member agency. I'm going to go back just to make sure that we cleared that out. And so I'm going to go back to this amendment process. So that has been cleared out. So next I'm going to hit the next button, and I'm going to go to the member allocation section. And this is where you will distribute the additional funding, the additional COLA during the May revise. So this consortium, again, only one funded member, what happened? 502. So we know that there was only one funded member. Let me go back here because something just happened. So we have one funded member, Antelope Valley Union High School. And so when we go here and we go next, for some reason, the CCD is coming up. I'm gonna have to contact the programmers regarding that, but we're only gonna allocate the funding to this, to Antelope Valley Union High. And so they have 52,438 additional funding for the 22-23 program year. And so what you want to do is you want your total allocated to members to equal your total CAP funds. So right now, they do not equal because we have the 52,438 that still needs to be allocated. So I'm going to go ahead and update this to 4,542,698, because again, I want my total allocated to members and total CAP funds to equal 0. That is how you are able to complete an allocation amendment. So now that I've done that, I'm going to hit next, and then I'm going to preview. So when I preview, I see that I've allocated all of the additional funding to Antelope Valley Union High because they are the only funded member of this consortium. Up top, you see the fiscal declaration information. This information was carried over from the CFAD. So during the CFAD process, they updated their narrative. They had the opportunity to change their funding channel, their remaining direct funded, and they didn't have any changes for this particular program year. So we've allocated the additional $52,438. So our total CAP funds and our total allocated to members equal, and we have a total remaining of 0. So as you can see here, total remaining must be 0 in order to complete this process. Then you can review the member agencies. So we have Antelope Valley Union High, Southern Kern Unified, and Antelope Valley CCD. Those are all of the members of the consortium. And if I were the consortium lead, I would hit submit, but I'm on the live site, so I am not going to hit submit because then all of their members are going to be notified. But as you're completing this process, you'll hit submit. A window will appear that asks you if you want to include any comments when the members are notified. And if you do, you include them. If not, you just press OK. And then all of your members will be notified to approve or reject this allocation amendment. If all members approve, the allocation amendment process is done, and you are done for this particular phase of allocating the final 2022-23 funds. If one member rejects, then the entire allocation amendment will become null and void, and the consortium will have to decide what to do next and then come back and complete the allocation amendment process all over again. So at this time, I'm going to cancel this amendment because, again, I don't want to make any changes to their allocations. I'm on the live site. So I canceled it to make sure that nothing happens to their allocation amendment, but I will check to see if there are any questions for me at this time. And I am not seeing anything. So any questions related to the allocation amendment process?
Veronica, would it be okay if people unmuted themselves to ask the question?
Yes, absolutely.
Veronica?
You can.
It's Corinne from Excel, San Mateo County. So because we also take some of our money, all the members contribute to the administrative costs. So is this where I would actually make that adjustment in the allocation amendment?
What I would advise you to do is you allocate the funds based on your CFAD, and then you can do, after you certify that by September 1st, maybe Veronica, can you show Karen how to do an allocation amendment afterwards? So let's say they do their allocation amendment for this May revised amount by September 1st, but then they want to move money around for consortia level activities. And who's your consortia district? Is that San Mateo?
Be San Mateo.
Yeah, so so they would want to move money to San Mateo Unified after September 1st. Any suggestions how they would go about that?
So it's the same process. So Corinne, once you have completed the allocation amendment to allocate the COLA, you would complete that process, all members would approve. And then once all members have approved and those monies have been redistributed, then you would go back and complete another allocation amendment. And that's where you would move the money to the high school district for the consortium level funding.
So then would I have to send we have to send an invoice to the member districts, or would the money be moved around?
Are you guys a fiscal agent or direct funded?
Yes, we're a fiscal agent.
Okay, no, so what would happen is the fiscal agent could do that and then just adjust the disbursement amounts. I don't know when you disperse the funds, because they come in 11 installments, you'll be doing that throughout the year. So with the allocation amendment that you would do for the consortia funding, the fiscal agent would just make that adjustment in the disbursement schedules later on in the year. So I don't see that being a big issue. As long as the members are all in favor of giving the consortia the funding, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, talk to whoever's the fiscal person about after you certify this May revised amount, then you'd have to do additional allocation amendments, but that would be at the fiscal agent would determine that, and then they would have to make sure how much each member is getting so they don't give too much. So they would have to double check on Nova what those amounts are for their books in disbursement of funds. So just a few extra steps there for the fiscal agent.
And Corinne, I certainly want to emphasize completing the allocation amendment once you all begin to transfer those funds for the consortium level funding. We run into problems with other consortia who have made those inter-consortium transfers and did not account for it in Nova. And when it comes to reporting, it makes things unbalanced. So we want to make sure that, books balance at the district level, but then also in Nova.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Corinne, it's a lot easier with the fiscal agent though. If you're direct
Yes.
funded, that's where it gets really complex. And I think that's the issue that Veronica was referring to. We had one consortia that was direct funded that did all these allocation amendments and thought that since they put it in Nova, that we would see it and we would move that money at the state level, which we didn't, because we don't do that. So that has to happen at the local level.
All right,
Does
so
that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, there are questions in the chat. So Prue asks, can you explain the COLA allocation process? Should we allocate that first, then allocate the remaining based on our CFAD?
Actually, I think the way the process works is the CFAD is first. And so you've already submitted that to us. And then what I would do for this adjusted amount, which is also COLA, it's just like a extra COLA that we got at the May revise. You could use the same, like I showed you in that example, use that same percentage that you did for the CFAD. You just give everybody that same percentage. I mean, you could try to calculate it because you guys are a fiscal agent. So, you could try to calculate that COLA out to the nth degree, but it's just easier just doing a percentage split and then dividing that up with the adjusted amount that you're processing. So that would be what I would advise. So you don't have to do the CFAD, you already did that, but I would look at how you allocated your CFAD to determine how you want to split up the adjusted amount that's sitting there in Nova from the May revise. And then after you do that, you would certify it. And then if you want to make any additional changes after that, those would be allocation amendments after this process. And you could do that throughout the year. But make sure you do that after you certified this adjustment, if that helps.
All right, and then the next question is from Janae. Just to clarify, if we have more than one direct funded member, the consortium lead will take the total revised amount and divide it up between members according to their individual allocation percentage in the CFAD and enter those amounts in the allocation amendment?
No, actually, if you're direct funded and your consortium is, I believe, you would go to the allocation memo, click on the second link that takes you to the direct funded and fiscal agent allocation schedule, and go to your consortium. I don't know if you want to bring that up, Veronica, or not, but under Foothill De Anza, we have it broken out for each member how much the increase is. So you would just use those amounts that we're giving you, type those into Nova and certify those. You don't have to do any calculations if you're direct funded. We did that for you because we had to give those schedules to Department of Finance in advance to say how much the Chancellor's Office is giving out to the field and how much CDE is giving out to the field. So that's why we had to do that calculation before you got, I guess, before we got the schedules to Department of Finance. And that's why we put it in the memo, if that makes sense. I don't know, Veronica, do you have a chance to show that schedule or the allocation spreadsheet that we put in the memo, the second one that has it broken down by direct funded member?
So I'm on the CAP website. I went to administrators funding, and then you'll go to annual CAP allocation. And under the 22-23 folder is the CAP field 22-23 allocation with May revised final. So that is the final memo. Oh, excuse me, this is the actual schedule.
Yeah, do you want to make it just a little bigger
Yeah.
if we can? Okay, so then if you scroll down a little bit to Foothill, I think it's probably the second page. And there it is. So you see, Janae, that we broke it up for each of your members. If you go across, you'll see, I guess if we had the heading, that column showing the May revise adjustment, that's the amount you're putting into Nova, and that would zero out the adjustment amount that's in Nova right now and get you to the new final. So that second column there is the May revise adjustment. And so you see we've already calculated that for Fremont Union High is 38,518. For De Anza College, it's 2,836. Same for Foothill. Palo Alto's 20,509, and Mountain View is 46,947. So that's all calculated. I think in the past, you guys had some issues when you tried to calculate this on your own and it didn't match and there were some problems. That's why we're calculating it for you, because it has to match the cash disbursement that we send out through state controllers to county offices. And there's your new total, the 9,671,862. So.
All right. And then Margie's question is along the same lines. So she says, for direct funded agencies, how do I find out how much money is coming to each of our schools if it's not in Nova?
Where's Margie from? What consortium?
It's okay, Neil, you guys just answered it.
Oh,
From-
okay.
From Rio Hondo, but you just answered it, so thank you.
Okay, so you would just go down to the Rio Hondo part of the spreadsheet. And I think you guys have like a few more members, but you would see it all calculated for you. And that's the amount you would put into Nova as your amended amount. And then it would zero out to whatever the total adjustment amount. Once you put all the numbers in for your members, then you should have zero, like Veronica showed us in her demo.
All right. And then Crystal asks, sorry if you covered this already, do members need to approve the allocation amendment during a public meeting?
Good question. I mean, technically, if you're using the CFAD percentages, you already had a public meeting to approve those percentages. This is just an adjusted amount to the COLA. So I would say, you know, you could still use that same public meeting, but if you're not comfortable with that, you know, you could, but I'm saying since the state's using your CFAD to calculate this, I would think you'd be okay with not having that follow-up public meeting because we're already using those percentages. So you had that public meeting, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody has any reservations about that. Kelly says they're doing a public meeting tomorrow. Let's see, we always share a trend of annual amounts. Okay. So whatever you're comfortable with, you don't have to, but if it's good practice in your consortium and you're used to having these public meetings and explaining the amounts and things like that, it might be something willing to explore. If everybody's comfortable with that, then I don't think you have to do it. So it's your call on that one.
All right, and then the next question is Stephanie. She says, I'm brand new to this and am unsure if we are fiscal agent or direct funded. And I believe Holly may have answered.
Where's Stephanie from? What?
San Francisco.
So I think San Francisco is direct funded. So if we scroll down to San Francisco.
This was used, sorry, my question was answered and this was super useful. Again, I'm brand spanking new, so I'm still floundering around a little bit, and Holly did answer. Thank you very much.
Okay. So Stephanie, you can find out how much San Francisco City College should get, and then you find out how much San Francisco Unified should get. And those are the exact amounts they should type into Nova and certify.
Perfect, thanks.
All right, thank you. And that's the amount of cash that you'll be getting as well. When you look at the final allocation amounts, those will be the amounts in 11 installments that'll be coming your way via your county office, via the state controllers, from the chancellor's office, or from the CDE. So in your case, the chancellor's office would be sending City College their funding, and CDE would be sending San Francisco Unified their funding. So you can see why we needed to know that amount way in advance, because we have to move money around, how much the chancellor's office gets to send out, how much CDE gets to send out. That all gets decided actually it was a couple of weeks ago, we had to decide that. So, and Myra worked on a memo to Department of Finance along with us at CDE to get that approved, and then finance is in the process of shifting those funds around. So we can do things like that for direct funded members. If you're a fiscal agent, like in the case of Corinne, we would just send the money, CDE would send the money to San Mateo Unified, who is the fiscal agent for that consortium.
Okay, and it looks like John had a question. Will completing the CFAD amendments be on the PLC topic list when they meet as well?
Is that I think that's a TAP question, isn't it? Is there a PLC for specific for adult ed? I'm not involved in that one, am I?
No. So John, are you asking, or will we hold a PLC?
Well, we've had historically, we've had PLCs for those those agencies that are struggling with technical processes, assistance, or even best practices implementation. And I was just wondering if they're going to have a chance to talk about this during their time as PLCs as well.
Yeah, let us think about that, John, because I don't think we've had a PLC on completing the CFAD.
No, didn't we have just open PLCs that participating districts, schools were participating in?
We had office hours. Are you talking about that?
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, and I was just referring it. Are we still doing that?
Potentially.
Yeah, let me interrupt, John. John, we're still in the process of determining what our contract is for the next 2 years, but we, at this point, it is not something that is built into the contract, and that would be something that we'd need to look into.
So we're not, when did we stop doing office hours?
So I think, John, what Renee's saying is we used to do office hours, but since we're going into the new contract year, it's being negotiated right now. And Renee, you weren't sure whether those would stay in or not, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And as far as like providing technical assistance and support, that's something that our TAP will continue to offer and provide. So definitely reaching out, and if there is a specific question that is tied to your institution and you need some one-on-one support, we do have a hotline for you to be able to reach out to our TAP and be able to receive that assistance. And we do plan to continue to provide that service moving forward.
I appreciate that, Myra. It sounds like there's a question here that I'm hearing in a lot of silence about whether or not we will even have office hours available to the field. Who makes that final decision?
As far as having a technical assistance the way that we have, that's something that's going to continue, being able to provide that service where our members are able to reach out to our TAP team and be able to receive that support. That is going to continue. I think what we're referencing, the PLCs, is something that is separate. So we definitely want to clarify the technical assistance, the hotline, the support, the hours of availability where you are able to reach out and get that technical assistance. That is still there and will continue to be there.
The final decision, though, on whether or not we have office hours or PLCs, which I've heard from a lot of schools as a valuable resource in the field through my role, who makes the final decision as to whether or not we get to continue that through TAP?
I think that is something that our leadership is just reviewing as part of the process in determining, what's successful, what's something to continue to move forward. Our priority is to continue to offer as much support, valuable support that is necessary, to be able to support all of our members, our consortia. So that is definitely our priority, and that is how we evaluate how to continue to measure and assess, just as we have these type of reporting for our consortia to assess the outcomes and what is being put into place. That is the same process that we follow to ensure that we provide excellent quality service, as we have and continue to provide the trainings, the support, and the service to the field. So we definitely listen to what is needed, what is valuable, and we'll ensure that we prioritize to continue to provide that support and that service moving forward.
Who's the leadership that's making the determination?
It's the representatives that are hosting this presentation. So under the administration of the Chancellor's Office and in collaboration with the Department of Education.
Okay. So the Chancellor's Office is jointly administering per ed code the program, including TAP, which is the side-funded technical assistance piece, and making decisions about what service provision under TAP looks like?
Yeah, so actually, if you do have further questions, just so that we're not taking up the time in today's presentation, I would highly encourage you to reach out to us. I'll put my email in the chat box. This just sounds like it's perhaps a separate question that is outside of what we're trying to focus on in today's presentation. So I welcome you to send me an email if you do have additional questions or concerns, and we can certainly bring that up to our leadership. Yeah, I'll put my email on there. So please reach
I've
out.
got it, Myra. Thank you. The other question I would have then is, so we use the office hours or PLC time, as a lot of us refer to it, as an opportunity to get additional guidance outside of these webinars, particularly if maybe we go back and watch the webinar and still need some more help, or we just need to kind of talk it through with someone. Is targeted technical assistance also going to be an opportunity for those regions that are continuing to struggle, particularly with regards to the topic of this webinar, which is going to be allocation amendments, procedures, processes. I think maybe like similar, the question of when do we vote? How do we vote? What's considered public approval, Brown Act compliance, to make sure that we don't get into other trouble. Is that something that's still available to those regions that have benefited from it?
Absolutely. So we are focused on enhancing and ensuring that we structure and fully have a good clarity on where you can reach out to, what processes you go through as a field if you are needing to provide or needing to request this technical assistance. That is what we are trying to work towards, to make sure that we can clarify as we have new individuals that are taking on these roles to partake in these memberships in this consortia and participate in that process. We want to ensure that for our new and continuing participants, we are able to streamline and provide that service to our field where we're not having to guess where the information is or how we go. And our TAP has done an amazing support in providing that information and that service. And we are 100% supporting that, continuing those efforts. We just want to ensure that there is a good streamlined process that as we have new members, continuing members, you are able to go out and where to find that support. That is our priority, knowing where you can go. It's clear, it's upfront where you can go and find that support. It is our priority to ensure that we have that. We continue to provide that service through these webinars, through the request line that we have, where members are able to submit the request through the website, email. So we're just trying to ensure that we can enhance that and continue to provide that service so that there's no confusion, there's clarity. If there's a new member, you know where to go to get that assistance. And like I mentioned, if you have additional questions and concerns, please reach out to us. We are always open and willing to listen to the needs of the field.
Yeah, thank you. Now, TAP's been a wonderful asset and resource for all of us in the field over the last 7 or 8 years as we've been, implementing this consortium model. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. We 100% agree with that. We are in support of our TAP and want to continue to ensure that we continue to enhance, provide the support, and it's just a process that we all go through as we are running these programs. So it's definitely our priority to ensure that we put you all first in the line and making sure that we're providing the support that's essential, that's helping you all do your jobs and carry your jobs forward. So that is our utmost priority. And like I said, please feel free to reach out if you have additional questions or concerns.
Last comment is, hopefully the contracts with our California Adult Ed support providers, our network, can get processed and moved forward quickly, because I know all of us out in the field are anxious to have better, stronger access to them, whether or not we're a WIOA title school, and benefit from their data. I think most notably the revised adult education online dashboard tool would benefit from some of the information that we've collected over the years on program and service provision as we build out pathways in support of us in the field as well too. So yeah, thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there's in the chat, there's a lot of supportive responses and people that took advantage of like PLCs and office hours and all that stuff. So we appreciate all the feedback.
John, guys, gonna last past the week.
And please don't forget to mute yourself.
Who manages the phone list?
Okay, thank you. Veronica, or Holly or Mandalee, were there any other questions? We might have answered some were comments.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Tracy Williams from South Bay Consortium. Just a quick question, as I had the opportunity to enter my numbers into Nova. So I know that we want to get down to 0, right, with the amendments, but if we're off a couple of dollars, is it more important to match each member's amount? And when I do that, it does match the total, but then there's still a difference of, let's just say $2. Am I supposed to?
Tracy, you're in South Bay with Torrance and El Camino in that group?
No, Santa Clara.
Oh, Santa Clara. So you're direct funded, right?
and I put each member's allocation into the system. It totals to the overall new allocated amount, but at that bottom, that adjusted number, there's a insignificant amount of $2 that's just didn't round well. Is it important? Is it important that dollars match or let
I would just make sure you spread those $2 maybe over 2 members. So usually with accounting, if it's $1 or less, it's insignificant. Sometimes if it's more than $1, it gets to be problematic. So I would just suggest if it is rounding up or down, just spread it among a couple of members and then let them know that it would be, you know, due to rounding, it would be off by, you know, $1.
Okay.
But no more.
So it's
Sorry about that.
So it's most important to get to 0 at the bottom, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's tough when you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. The rounding always comes into play, unfortunately. So
That's it. Thank you.
all right, thanks for catching that.
All right, so I am not seeing any additional questions.
Did everyone get a chance to look at their, I guess, look at the memo, look at the sheet that Veronica has up on the screen? Does anything look weird? Any questions? This is the chance or the time. Since you have Myra and I and Veronica, Mandalee, and Holly to ask any questions.
And while folks are thinking about questions, we did have one, Neil, that you may be able to answer. Kelly asks about WIOA. She wants to know if the allocations have been released.
So Carolyn, I think announced this a few weeks ago. We have the notice from the feds and we're processing it for the locals. So I'm thinking Carolyn was hoping to get those grant award notices for WIOA 2 out maybe by the end of the month, but in all likelihood with mailing and all that, it'll probably go out maybe in sometime in August, hopefully early August. Hopefully that answers Kelly's question. I don't have any.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct, Neil.
Oh, thanks, Carolyn.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. I didn't realize you were here. All right, so I don't see any additional questions.
All right, so everybody's really comfortable about the allocation amendment process. It sounds like some people are already entering into Nova as we spoke. At least Tracy found out that the rounding issue, that was great to
Okay.
share. So,
And we do actually have, oh, sorry, Neil.
no, go ahead.
We do have one additional question, Carolyn or Neil. Corinne wants to know, one of her member schools would like to know if WIOA funds can be carried over.
No, they're not able to carry over. Not WIOA, unfortunately. It reverts back to the state. So that doesn't mean you just have to buy a bunch of toilet paper, right?
Yes, Neil, that does not mean that. Thank you. I just got that text message, so I will let my member know.
No, there are some, you know, things you can do, you know, if you want to upgrade your technology and things like that, but you have to work back through your consultant at CDE on that if you're going to do budget revisions and move money around. So those expenditure reports are due this month, probably by the end of the month. So they should reach out to their CDE consultant as soon as they can if they are going to make some budget adjustments and maybe purchase something that they hadn't originally planned in their budget. So there should be that conversation happening with CDE on that one.
Hi, I have a question that's actually about the next webinar on the 27th on the annual plan. I unfortunately am not able to attend that day because I have another meeting at the same time. Is that going to be recorded? And if so, how long will it be until we would have access to it?
So yes, Prue, it will be recorded. And it takes us a few weeks to receive the recording back from our third-party vendor.
Mm.
So we can anticipate having it back probably mid to late August. The report.
Okay,
But
Okay,
if you,
that's not so bad.
okay, yeah, and if you have any questions during that time, feel free to contact TAP and we can either have a phone call, a Zoom meeting, whatever the case may be, and help you walk through that if you need more immediate questions answered. And that's for anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and so, yeah, actually, we can't remediate anything at this time, so it'll be probably a little longer. But yeah, feel free to contact us if you have any questions, if you were unable to attend the webinar.
So that would be like a one-on-one session, Veronica?
Yeah.
Possible, okay. For consortia leads, right? Because you don't have time for all 440 members, right? But consortia directors and leads. So Prue, you could have a one-on-one special webinar to help you out.
Oh, I feel very, very special. I also have Carol Hirota, I think is how you pronounce her name, who's
Right.
our targeted technical assistance that I can go to as well, and she's fabulous.
Oh, wonderful. That's good to hear. I know there's a lot of comments in the chat, but I'm not sure if there's any questions. A lot of nice comments.
Yes, no questions that I am seeing, but if you have missed one and you would like to ask your question, definitely feel free to come off mute. And while you are thinking about any additional questions, we will have the annual plan webinar that will take place next Wednesday. It's from noon to 1:30. So we'll walk through the annual plan guidance as well as how to complete the annual plan in Nova. The guidance will be released before the end of the day today. So all consortia leads, members, member representatives, and anyone who registered for the annual plan webinar that will take place next week, you will receive the guidance. It will also be in the newsletter and on the website. So everyone will have access to that. And then if you have any questions about the guidance, please prepare them for next Wednesday and we'll be sure to answer them at that time. And the annual plan, as you all know, has been extended. So the new due date, I'm going to go to the calendar because I don't know it off the top of my head.
I think it's September 14th,
Yes.
I think.
Yes, September 14th is the new due date for the annual plan for 2022-23. So it's extended for this year only. So,
And I think Kelly, I think Renee put in the chat, but do you have any details on the directors event in September, Veronica, to share?
yes, so that save the date will be coming out soon. We just have to finalize some logistical pieces, but it will be September 19th through 23rd. It will be an online event this year with 1 to 2 sessions per day throughout that week. The last day, September 23rd, will be the new consortia lead onboard training. So if there are any new consortia leads who are on the line today, you would definitely want to register for that last day. That day, the CAP office, the CDE, the Chancellor's Office, as well as our counterparts, Casas Wested, and others will come and just give you a high-level overview of CAP, talk about the different CAP deliverables, NOVA, so on and so forth. So it'll be a great day for new consortia leads. And then the other 4 days will be centered on the implementation of the 3-year plan. So the new 2022-25 3-year plan. We'll be talking about that throughout the rest of the day. And my apologies for my, sorry.
So Veronica, let's say I've been a consortia lead or director for a little bit, maybe a year or so, but I feel that I'm still new. Could I still sign up for that? Is that there's not any strict criteria, right?
Correct. No, there's no strict criteria. All are welcome to participate in that particular day, but it will be geared towards newer or new consortia leads. But no, all are welcome. There are no restrictions.
All right. And then following Janae's comment, Veronica, I guess she's following what you did. Does that sound right?
Just enter Foothill Deanza numbers, total remaining proposed allocation column equals 0. Is still the new amended amount. Janae, are you talking about, because there are 2 columns, so the first column is the total allocated to members, the total CAP funds, and then the total remaining, and then next to it is where total remaining equals 0. Is that what you are referring to?
Yeah, so the first column, which is the current allocation, yeah, that total remaining is still in the red, the new allocation, but my proposed allocation is 0 after I put in the numbers.
Yes, that is correct. So
Okay.
the next column over is what will help you, or will allow you to submit in Nova. So yes, you are correct. You're doing
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
And then Mandalee put a plug for the summit. Is there anything you guys are still looking for the summit that you want to mention?
So we are still looking for everything. The summit is based on our state priorities. So there are 7 of them: equity, learner transition, leadership, marketing, program development, program evaluation, and technology and distance learning. So we are still accepting proposals. Absolutely. You have until August 19th to submit your proposal, and you'll be notified by September 9th on whether or not your proposal has been submitted. So yes, if you would like to submit a proposal, we welcome you to do so. We actually encourage and want you to submit, so please submit and pass the word. Also, we are accepting program nominations for our Advancing California Adult Education website. And so if you have a model program that you think will of course, showcase the wonderful work that you all are doing, but that you know the field could really benefit from knowing about, please submit that as well, because we want to showcase and highlight all of the amazing work that's going on throughout the state and be able to recognize those programs at the summit. So feel free to submit your model program.
And Veronica, Tim had a question about, he has some new members, and should he go in and update in Nova those member representatives prior to putting in the amendment?
Yes, absolutely, because then you will not be able to approve, like every member will not be able to approve in order to complete that process. So yes, please update your contacts. And that's for everyone. As soon as you know that you have a new member who's coming on board or someone has left, be sure to update the contacts, because as we're going through these different approval processes, we want to make sure that we are sending notification to the appropriate individuals.
Yeah, because when you send reminders, you could be sending it to an email of someone that's no longer there, right?
Absolutely, yes. And also let TAP know, because we do send a lot of direct communication to consortia leads as well as member representatives. And we too want to make sure that we are notifying the appropriate person. So whenever there's a change in member representation as well as consortia leads, we want to make sure that we have updated contact information. We use that quite frequently. And Marina, the proposals are due August 19th and the nominations are due August 17th. All right, so I'm not seeing any additional questions. Oh, here was one. When do we send TAP updated contact information? Whenever you have it, we have an internal database that we consistently update. So whenever you have updated contact information, please be sure to notify us, as well as update your contact information in Nova. All right, so it looks like there are no more questions. Do you need a list, or is Nova enough? A list of new contact information, Dr. Diaz? So both. TAP needs the list, and then you also need to update your member contact information in Nova. Okay, yes, please let us know of your 4 individuals, and then also update in Nova. All right. All right, so I am not seeing any additional questions. So if not, we can definitely move to close, but if there are any additional questions, please feel free to contact TAP, especially as you are completing your allocation amendment, updating contact information. We will have the annual plan webinar next Wednesday. You can anticipate receiving the guidance this afternoon. But again, if you do have any questions for anything, be sure to reach out to TAP. You can contact us via email, you can contact us by telephone, and you can also submit a support request online. And that is all that I have. Oh, complete the evaluation. Please, please, please complete the evaluation. And let us know what you thought about this session. Also, please let us know about your professional development needs. It's good to collect that information so that we are aware of what the field needs and see if there's an opportunity for us to do something about it. All right, well, that is all that I have. Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Renee. Thank you to my TAP team members, Mandalee and Holly. And thank you all very much for participating this afternoon. We hope that this information was valuable to you and that you'll be able to complete your allocation amendment seamlessly. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us and we'll be sure to help you. All right, thank you all very much. I'll stop sharing my screen and we can move to close the room. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.